Hi, everybody, and welcome back for another exciting week of Espanol. This week together we'll be studying Chapter 8, where we'll be learning a new tense. That is the imperfect tense in Spanish. We spent a lot of time in past weeks discussing the preterite and the irregular preterite. So today you're going to learn about the imperfect, and then we'll talk about how to differentiate between the preterite and the imperfect, and finally end with some impersonal constructions that you might see in real life. So let's start with a brief recap of the preterite tense. For an AR verb, we have a certain set of verb endings. We have aste, o, amos, astes, and aron for an AR verb. For an ER or IR verb, we have iste, io, imos, istes, and ieron. You also had these irregular preterite verbs for which we had a really awesome song. Fui, di, vi, hice, quise, vine yo, supe, pude, puse yo, dije, traje, conduje yo, tuve, anduve, estuve yo. And getting to those yo forms should help you unlock the remaining verb forms. So remember you had a certain set of endings for these song words, iste, o, imos, istes, and ieron, except for the J group, which instead of using ieron for the they form, just used eron. Okay, so be careful with those. As I said, the imperfect tense is the second of the two past tenses. You, of course, have the preterite and the imperfect. And before we begin talking about when to use the imperfect and when to use the preterite, let's first just talk about the conjugation process. So for a simple verb like hablar, you're going to remove your AR and add back the following endings for the imperfect tense. You have aba, abas, aba, abamos, note the accent on the A there, abais, and aban. So repeat with me. Aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. Okay, so with a verb like hablar, once you remove your AR, you end up with like hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, so on and so forth. For an ER or IR verb, you have the following endings: ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, and ian. Okay, so these are your imperfect endings. So repeat with me. Ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. And these are your imperfect endings for ER and IR verbs. So for a verb like comer, you end up with comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comíais, and comían. So don't forget that the yo and el, ella, usted forms are identical in this tense. So you really have to look at the context of the sentence to see if you're saying I used to talk or he used to talk. I used to eat or she used to eat. So make sure that you pay attention to the context of your sentence. Luckily, with the imperfect tense, there are only 3 irregular verbs in the whole language. So you really have to memorize 3 verbs. The verb ir, ser, and ver are all irregular. Ir, ser, and ver. Ir becomes iba, ser becomes era, and ver becomes veía. I want to start with ver because it's probably the least irregular of the 3. With ver, you chop off your ER and add back ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, in ian. Now, technically, this is irregular because they did not lose the E. They kept the E all the way through. So veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, and veían. So not all that irregular. Ir and ser are very irregular, and you just have to memorize them. Ir becomes iba, and you can sort of see a pattern here. Iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, ibais, and iban. Ser becomes era. You can also see a pattern here. Era, eras, era, éramos, erais, and eran. Notice both íbamos and éramos both have accents on the first syllable. Okay, so do not forget those accents. Those are important. These are your only 3 irregulars you have to learn. So let's start with some basic conjugations. To say that ella limpiar el baño, we're going to take limpiar. We're going to chop off our AR. Let me turn on my caps here. Chop off our AR. And we're going to add back, for an AR verb in the she form, you're going to add back aba. So ella limpiaba el baño cada semana. She used to clean the bathroom every week. Nosotros and ir. You know that ir is irregular. So as we go back up and find ir, we know that ir becomes iba. We're saying that nosotros, we used to go somewhere. And you can find that the nosotros form here should be íbamos. So nosotros íbamos a la escuela cada día. We used to go to school every single day, right? I'm sure you can go through and complete the rest of these. Take a moment and pause our audio and give these a try. Okay, now that you've had a moment to try these, you can see that ellos with preguntar, we're going to chop off our AR, an AR verb in the imperfect. In the they form for ellos, we're going to add back aban. And ellos preguntaban muchas preguntas. They used to ask a lot of questions. Yo and salir, we're going to chop off our IR and salir, find our IR ending as ia, and add back yo salía temprano cada día. I used to leave early every day. And cerrar, you're going to chop off your AR, go back to your to form ending for an AR verb, which is abas, add that to the end, and you get tú cerrabas las ventanas cada día. So not bad, probably the easiest of the conjugations you've learned this semester, I would say. So again, the imperfect, aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, and aban for an AR verb, or ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, and ian for an ER or IR verb. Now we're going to talk about how to know when to use the preterite or the imperfect. And this is where things get a little complicated. So, the preterite, you already know from before, we use the preterite for completed actions. Actions with a specific beginning and a specific end. Okay, so this also includes one-time actions. For example, yesterday I went to the store. Okay, it's a very specific time. You know that I did it yesterday, has a specific time. I went to the store. That action is completed. I went to the store, it's over with, okay? A lot of times we translate the preterite as ed, and sometimes it even occurs in a series of events. So for example, yesterday, I brushed my teeth, I showered, and I cooked breakfast. Okay, all of those end in ed, and it's a series of events telling you what I did in the morning. I cooked breakfast, I showered, and I brushed my teeth. Okay, so you can see a series of events, and you can see they're all ending in ed. Oftentimes you see these with transition words as well, like first, I went to the movies. Then, we went shopping at the Pinnacle. Finally, we had dinner at Aubrey's. Okay, so you can see a series of events with some transitions there as well. Notice most of these are translated again as ed. Not always, because you have some irregular verbs like I ran, I swam, I watched. Well, I guess watched is not irregular, but you have some irregular verbs there. But generally, the preterite can be translated as ed. Okay, the imperfect, on the other hand, is sort of the opposite. You see the imperfect with habitual or repeated actions. These very commonly occur with childhood, and they usually have some kind of indefinite time period. So when I was a kid, we used to go ice skating every Christmas. Okay, well, every Christmas implies habitual or repeated actions. When I was a kid, cuando era niño, implies childhood. And there's an indefinite time period there. When I was a kid, well, how long was I a kid? We don't really know, okay? So, indefinite time period. A lot of times, the imperfect tense is translated as used to. You may have noticed earlier in the video when we were talking about conjugating some of the sentence, I said she used to clean the bathroom every Friday. Well, how many Fridays did she clean the bathroom? We don't know. It's an indefinite time period. It's unclear. So that's an indefinite time period and also sort of a repeated action. Okay. In addition to used to, the imperfect tense is also sometimes conjugated as was or wereing. Was or wereing. Okay, so this brings me to another important point about interrupted actions and interrupting actions. So most commonly, whenever you see the imperfect translated as was or wereing, it usually occurs in a sentence where there's an interrupting action. So for example, we were watching TV when someone knocked on the door. Okay? We were watching TV would be the imperfect. Number one, because it's translated as was or wereing. Number two, because it's an ongoing action. Okay? We were watching TV when someone knocked on the door. Knocking on the door is a completed action. Okay, so notice we were watching TV. That's interrupted. Our watching of TV was interrupted by someone's knocking on the door. So the interrupted action in this case is imperfect. We were watching TV. Whereas the interrupting action, the completed action, is preterite. We were watching TV, imperfect, when someone knocked on the door, preterite. Okay, you also see the imperfect used a lot with emotions and descriptions as well as ages. So when he was 15, once upon a time, those kind of things very commonly use the imperfect. So storytelling is where these really come into play, and you can really see the difference in the preterite and the imperfect. One of my favorite things to do with my in-person students in Preterite Imperfect is to allow them to read Goldilocks and the Three Bears in Spanish and talk about why each tense may have been used in a certain circumstance or another. So you can see these here. So let's talk about why we use the preterite one more time. As I said, I'm going to give you a little acronym here to help you remember this. And this acronym is BOIST, B-O-I-S-T, BOIST. The B in BOIST stands for the beginning or the ending of an action. You often see these verbs used with the preterite. Comenzar, to begin. Empezar, which also means to begin or to start. And terminar, to end. Okay, so for example, el partido empezó a las 5. So the game began at 5. How many times can the game begin? Only once. That's preterite. Okay? El partido terminó a las 9. The game ended at 9. These things, beginning and ending, imply completed actions. Things can usually only begin and end once. Okay? So the be in voiced, beginning or ending of actions. The O of voiced stands for one-time actions. And this is where you see a lot of those preterite trigger words that we discussed in a previous video. Ayer, yesterday, that implies a specific time, which makes us use the preterite. Anoche, last night, again, a specific time. Anteayer, the day before yesterday. La semana pasada, last week. El mes pasado, last month. El año pasado, last year. All of those are very, very specific time periods. So you're going to use the preterite. So voiced, beginning or ending of actions, one-time events. The interruption. I always love to tell a story here, and I always think of horror movies. I love horror movies, and particularly there's usually always a dumb blonde in every horror movie, right? So when the dumb blonde was walking down the street, she was abducted. Okay, so she was walking down the street. That's going to be an imperfect action because it's just continuously happening. She was walking down the street, was or wereing, imperfect. And then she was attacked, or the killer attacked her. It's a one-time event. It's an interruption. The killer's attacking her interrupts that ongoing action of the walking. So your preterite is usually the action that does the interrupting. Okay, the killer snatched her. She was abducted. Those things are one-time events, and they're interrupting. So again, the preterite, voiced, beginning or ending of events, one-time events, interruptions. Okay. We also use the preterite for a series of events, the S in voiced, and these are when things happen one after the next. So I went to the store, I bought some milk, I got gas, and I went home. Okay, so a series of events all happening, boom, boom, boom. And then finally, transitions. You often see the preterite used with these transition words like primero, segundo, tercero, luego, entonces, por fin, por último. So you see these transition words commonly used. So first, second, third, then, finally, in the end, that kind of thing. Okay? So let's practice a little bit here. I'm giving you some sentences in Spanish. They're all in the preterite, as you can see. But I want you to tell me why I use the preterite in these sentences, and I want you to give me a reason from voiced. For example, number one, ayer yo hice la tarea. Yesterday I did my homework. Here we would use hice because this is a one-time thing. It's one of those pre-programmed words. One time I did my homework, and it was yesterday, ayer, specific time, completed event. Number two says, tú fuiste al mercado, compraste comida, regresaste a casa y cocinaste la cena. So you went to the market, you bought some food, returned home, and cooked dinner. Why might we use the preterite here? Hopefully you're saying T. There's a bunch of transitions in there. Or you might also say S, a sequence of events, which is probably the more correct of the two. You're seeing this series or sequence of events continuing. You went to the market, bought food, returned home, and cooked dinner. Number three, nosotros terminamos de jugar. We stopped playing or we finished playing. This is probably the beginning or ending of an action because those verbs like terminar, empezar, and comenzar, you can only begin or end one time. Okay, so beginning or ending. Number four, primero, él fue a la escuela, luego aprendió matemáticas y por fin regresó a casa a hacer la tarea. So, first, he went to school, then he learned math, and finally he returned home to do his homework. Why might we use the preterite here? Good. Hopefully you're saying that this is a transition. In some ways, this could also be argued as a sequence of events because it's telling you things that he did in a certain order. But obviously the transition words lead way to transition being the better answer here. Either way, you can see that the preterite should be used. Here's another great example. Number five, ellos leían. They were reading in the imperfect tense. Ellos leían cuando el teléfono sonó. They were reading when the phone rang. They were reading. This is my ongoing action. When the telephone rang, right? The phone only rang once, likely, and it interrupted their reading. So this is an interruption, which would be in the preterite, whereas the ongoing action, the reading, is still in the imperfect. So hopefully that helps kind of give you an idea. So remember voiced as our reason for using the preterite. Okay, I also have a cool little acronym for you for the imperfect, and this is UTOAD. UTOAD, U-T-O-A-D, as a reason why you would use the imperfect. The U in UTOAD stands for used to. We usually translate the imperfect as used to, like when I was a kid, we always used to go to the beach every summer, or we never went ice skating. Okay, so used to is our imperfect word here. You have some specific phrases that go along with the imperfect, such as siempre, always, nunca, never, todos los días, every day, cada año, every year, cada verano, every summer, or cuando yo era niño, when I was a kid. So, all of these are what we call those imperfect triggers, those words that you typically use with the imperfect tense. Okay, so UTOAD, the U is used to, the T is time, stating what time it was when something happened, like it was 8 o'clock at night, eran las 5 de la noche, when blah, blah, blah. Okay, so stating time, you usually use the imperfect. Now, remember back to Spanish 1, if we're saying it is a certain time, we say son las, unless it's 1 o'clock, and then we say es la una. Now, the imperfect still applies there. So we're using those bottom left and right boxes of ser, es, and son. When it becomes imperfect, we're using era, or eran. So typically you're going to say eran las in whatever time. It was 5, eran las 5. It was 8, eran las 8. Unless it's 1 o'clock. And then you're going to say era la una. It was 1. Okay, so utode, used to and time. The O in utode stands for these ongoing events. We talked about this with the horror movies and the interruptions. Usually the imperfect action is the one that gets interrupted. It's the ongoing action. So we were watching TV when someone knocked. Were watching is imperfect because it's was or wearing. And it's also imperfect because it's the action that gets interrupted. It's the ongoing action. The knocking, remember, we were watching TV when someone knocked. The knocked, ed, is preterite, whereas the was or wearing is imperfect. So uto, we talked about used to and time, ongoing events. Age is also generally imperfect. So stating how old someone was when something happened, he was 5 years old when they moved to California. He was 5. Tenía 5 años. He had 5 years. And then finally, the D in utode is description, describing what things or people used to be like in the past. So just like before, I'm going to give you a series of events here. And we're going to go through and talk about why these are going to be imperfect from utode. So, eran las 4 cuando tú llegaste. So it was 4 when you arrived. Why might we use the imperfect from utode? What reason did you say? Yeah, hopefully T, time. Ellos tenían 8 años cuando ocurrió el 11 de septiembre. So when 9/11 occurred, they were 8 years old. Why might you use utode here? Yeah, hopefully age. Age is what you're saying. Number 3. Nosotros siempre tocábamos el piano. So we always used to play the piano. There's a few different reasons why you might say this. On my paper, I said used to because that's how it's translated. Remember that siempre also is a trigger word for the imperfect. Siempre, nunca, todos los días, all those things are usually trigger words. Number 4, tu gato era simpático y grande. Your cat was nice and big. Okay, that's a description. He was big and he was nice. Well, how long was he nice? We don't know. How long was he big? We don't know. He could have lost weight. It's unclear. In number 5, we see the opposite of what we saw before. Ellos leían cuando el teléfono sonó. They were reading when the phone rang. Was or wearing is obviously imperfect. Why from utode might you have chosen leían? Good. Hopefully you're telling me it's an ongoing event. It's the action that gets interrupted. They were reading, which was interrupted by the phone's ringing. Okay? Hopefully you're feeling pretty good about those things. I have just one last thing I want to do with you here. I've given you some sentences and they're mixed together between the preterite and the imperfect. You need to select the correct form in either the preterite or the imperfect. And then you need to tell me why from utode or voiced you might have used these things. So number 1 says that yo siempre blank la tarea. In this case, siempre, always, is an imperfect trigger. So yo siempre hacía la tarea. I always used to do my homework. We're using hacía in this case because it is imperfect and it's unclear when I used to always do my homework. So I'd like for you to go ahead and pause this and give numbers 2 through 5 a try. Okay, now that you've had a moment to try these, number 2 gives you yo hice or hacía, and then la tarea anoche. So I did la tarea, the homework, anoche, last night. Last night is a specific time, so you know we're going to be using the preterite. What's my reason from voiced for using the preterite? Yeah, good. Hopefully you're saying it's a one-time thing. Anoche is my trigger word. Yo hice la tarea anoche. Number 3. I don't know what's wrong with me in numbers today. Number 3. Tu blank música cuando Paco llamó. So you blank music when Paco called. You're saying that you were listening to music. So again, was or wereing should be my imperfect option. So I should be using escuchabas here. And it is an ongoing event in this case. It's the ongoing action that gets interrupted. You were listening to music when Paco called. Finally, number 4, it says that Tomás either tuvo or tenía so many years, which are now covered up, 5 años. So Tomás either tuvo or tenía 5 años cuando el accidente ocurrió. So Thomas was 5 years old when the accident occurred. We're referring to Thomas's age, which is generally imperfect. So Tomás tenía 5 años. And then last one, number 5. Ellos blank la tarea. They blank their homework. And the verb empezar means to begin. You may recall you generally only begin things one time, which means this should be preterite. Ellos empezaron la tarea because of beginning or ending. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of practice. As we go back this week, I'm going to have you in some of your activities doing these in English first. So let's talk about these. When I was 15, I visited Ecuador. When I was 15 should be preterite or imperfect. Good, it should be imperfect. You're talking about my age. So when I was 17, I visited Ecuador. How many times did I visit Ecuador? Once. When was it? When I was 17. It's a specific time. So visited, ending in ed, is going to be the preterite. Whereas I was 17, the imperfect, because you're was or wereing and you're talking about age. Okay. While Grayson was buying shoes, Blaine was looking at hats. Both of these in this case are translated as was or wereing. So while Grayson was buying shoes, imperfect, Blaine was looking at hats, also imperfect. Okay, number 3. Riley was walking his dog when the car hit him. Riley was walking his dog, minding his own business. That's an ongoing action, okay? He's was or wereing, it's ongoing. That has to be good. Hopefully you're saying imperfect. Riley was walking the dog. When the car hit him, how many times did the car hit? Hopefully only once. Okay, it's a completed action. It's finished. So this is going to be the preterite. Riley was walking the dog when the car hit him. Okay, now let's look at this in Spanish. Yo leía cuando blank mi amigo. Yo leía. I was reading cuando blank mi amigo. I was reading when my friend called. My friend only called once. This is the preterite. It is the interrupting action. So ongoing, leía, in the imperfect, I was reading when he called. Interrupted my reading. Let's look at one more, and I'm going to let you try. Number 2 says that cuando yo era niño, when I was a little boy, yo siempre blank en la piscina. When I was a little boy, I always blank in the pool. I'm talking about childhood here, which is an imperfect trigger anyway, as is the word siempre, also an imperfect trigger. So when I was a little boy, I used to swim, also translated as used to, so definitely imperfect, in the pool. So when I was a little boy, I always used to swim in the pool. Imperfect. I'd like for you to go ahead and take a moment, pause the audio, and give numbers 3, 4, and 5 a try, please. Okay, now that you had a moment to try these, you can see in number 3, it says, primero, first, él jugó los videojuegos. He played some video games. Y luego, and then, él blank la tarea. So first, he played some video games. Then, he did his homework. There's a few clues here that should tell you this is the preterite. You have primero and luego, which are both transition words. You also have a preterite statement in the beginning, which is a hint. And you can see that this is sort of a series of events. He played video games and then he did his homework. It should be preterite with hizo. Number 4. Nosotros compramos los regalos, regresamos a casa y comer la cena. So we bought the presents, returned home, and then ate dinner. This is a series of events. We bought, in the preterite, the presents. We returned, in the preterite, home. And then we ate dinner. Should be preterite with comimos because it's a series of events in the preterite. Number 5. Tú terminar el examen primero. You finish the exam first. Obviously, beginning and ending, things like finishing, can only happen once, so this should be the preterite, terminaste. So there you go. You've now seen all of the imperfect conjugations, including regular and irregular verbs. You now hopefully have a good feeling of working with the preterite and the imperfect. I next want to talk to you about some constructions involving the impersonal say. Now, a lot of times, especially on signs, you see these on signs everywhere. And I actually went out into the world and got some pictures of signs for you to talk about. So typically, you see these impersonal constructions a lot with signs, and you don't want to say like anyone in particular. Like it's not saying that Matthew Harrison cannot swim in this lake right here, okay? It's just saying that swimming is prohibited, okay? Or that you're not saying that Matthew Harrison cannot smoke in this restaurant. You're saying that smoking in general is prohibited in this restaurant. So it's a very like impersonal way of just saying this is not allowed, okay? So typically you're going to use say, S-E, and the third person singular form of the verb when it's attributed to no one in particular. So for example, se prohíbe fumar en las heladerías. Smoking is prohibited in the ice cream shops. Or some might translate it as one prohibits smoking in the ice cream shops. Another example, se compra bien en este almacén. So literally, one shops well or one buys well in this department store, saying like, hey, you get good deals here. Se compra bien. Another example, se dice que hay una liquidación hoy en la zapatería León. So one says that there is a liquidation sale today in the shoe store called León. So one says that, se dice que, or we might say, oh, they say that, so you typically see a say with the singular form of the verb, conjugated in the singular third person, that he, she box, if you will. Here's some examples for you from the real world. Se prohíbe traspasar. So one prohibits trespassing, or trespassing is prohibited. Also, you can see some of these impersonal expressions with either the third person singular or the third person plural form of the verb. And this sort of communicates passive voice, saying that something is offered, or something is found, or something is sold. Okay? For example, se ofrecen descuentos en Internet. Discounts are offered online. In this case, ofrecer, your verb, to offer is conjugated to agree with descuentos, or discounts, which are plural. So instead of se ofrece, it's se ofrecen with an N, because you're using the they box. Discounts, they are offered online. Se ofrecen descuentos en Internet. Se encontró el anillo en el probador. The ring was found in the dressing room. Okay, so encontrar is your verb here. It's conjugated in the preterite tense and in the singular third person form, that he, she, it box, if you will. So the ring, it encontró, was found en el probador. Se encontró el anillo. Same thing here. Se vendían, in the imperfect tense, artículos de segunda mano en esta tienda. So second-hand articles, or we might say like hand-me-downs, are sold in this store. In this case, vendían is conjugated according with second-hand articles, and it's conjugated in the imperfect tense, so it should be translated as used to be sold. So second-hand articles used to be sold, they were sold in esta tienda, in this store. Okay, so again, depending on what comes after your impersonal say expression, it may be conjugated either in the third person singular form or in the third person plural form. Here's some more examples for you from the real world. No se permitan bicicletas y patinetas. So no se permitan. So one prohibits, or one does not allow, bicicletas y patinetas, bicycles and skates. Bicycles and skates are plural in this case, so we're saying permiten instead of permite. Here's an example from your book. Se abre el almacén a las 9. So the almacén, the department store, opens, se abre a las 9, at 9. In this case, the verb abrir has been conjugated in the third person singular form to agree with almacén, or department store. Sorry, this is a little blurry, but it's a great example. Se aceptan tarjetas de crédito y débito. So saying that cards of credit and debit, tarjetas de crédito y débito, cards plural, are accepted. Se aceptan. So they took the verb aceptar, to accept, and conjugated it in the third person plural form to say that they are accepted. Se aceptan tarjetas de crédito. Some other examples. No se permitan mascotas. Pets are not allowed. Permitan agrees with pets. Mascotas, which is plural. Se vende pollo. Chicken is sold here. Se vende pollo. Pollo is singular, so it agrees with the third person singular form of vender. Se vende pollo. Se alquila apartamento. An apartment is for rent. Alquila, alquilar, to rent, agrees with apartamento, or it, in the singular form. So se alquila apartamento. In my Spanish lab this week, you may be asked to complete some questions such as these, where you're going through and you have to make these agree. So, and you obviously want to pick the most logical one as well. So, en la frutería, at the fruit store, se vendía or se vendían plátanos y piñas. So, in the fruit store, bananas and pineapples used to be sold. Se vendía or se vendían? How do you know? Hopefully you're telling me that plátanos and piñas, bananas and pineapples, are more than one thing. They're plural, so we're going to use vendían here instead of vendía. So at the fruit store, bananas and pineapples are sold, but either se prohibía or se prohibían tocarlos. So at the fruit store, pineapples and bananas are sold, but one is prohibited from touching them. In this case, tocar, an infinitive, we're saying that one is prohibited. Se prohibía from touching, tocar, because it's an infinitive. Okay, hopefully you're getting a feel for those. Here's another one for you to try. It tells you that blank, que hay grandes liquidaciones hoy en el centro comercial. So blank, that there are great sales or big sales today at the mall. So your options are se abran, one opens, se dice, they say, or se ofrecen, they offer. In this case, we would use se dice, one says that. Se dice que hay grandes liquidaciones. I would like for you to pause this and give numbers 2 and 3 a try, please. Okay, now that you've had an opportunity to give these a try, number 2 says that blank artículos por precios muy bajos. So something articles for prices that are very low. Either they open articles for prices that are very low, or they offer articles. In this case, it should be se ofrecen, they offer. And in this case, we're using ofrecen in the third person plural form to agree with artículos, articles, which are also in the third person plural form. Okay, as we continue, you see on number 3 that es verdad que, it's true that las tiendas, the stores, blank, antes de las 9. Is it true that the stores open, se abren, antes de las 9? Is it true that they open before 9? In this case, abren comes from the verb abrir, and it's been conjugated to agree with tiendas, or stores, they. Okay, hopefully you're feeling good about those. The last thing you might be asked to do on My Spanish Lab is select whether something is true. So, se vendan cuadernos y bolígrafos en una papelería. So, notebooks and pens are sold in a paper store. True or false, right? Logical or illogical. And you just have to go through and select the most logical answer here. Number 3, se puede comprar una crema hidratante en una florería. Lógico o ilógico? And you have to select the right answer, okay? I believe that you can do this. They sell earrings in a library. illogical, right? So you need to go through. They already agree for you. You just have to go through and pick. So these are the kind of things you're going to have to be doing this week. I hope that you are beginning to feel much better about your use of the imperfect, the preterite versus the imperfect, and impersonal expressions in Spanish. Have a great day, everyone.